Again, welcome to the Q&A for Accidental Courtesy, put on by FAIR, the Foundation Against Intolerance and Racism. My name is Eric Smith. I am professor of rhetoric at York College of Pennsylvania and a board member for FAIR. So I am happy and proud to be a part of tonight's event. Tonight's event will be about Accidental Courtesy, which is a documentary that will be explained to you by the creators of the documentary shortly. Right now, I want to introduce the main panelists, starting first with the star of the show, Daryl Davis. And Daryl Davis is a musician, an author, a lecturer, and an actor, and an activist. I mean, he does it all, but I will read this ready-made blurb anyway to make sure we're thorough about who this guy is and why he's awesome. As a race relations expert, Daryl has received acclaim for his book, Clandestine Relationships, and his documentary, Accidental Courtesy, from many sources, including CNN, NBC, Good Morning America, TLC, NPR, The Washington Post, and many others. He is also the recipient of numerous awards, including the Elliott Black Award, the MLK Award, and the Bridge Builder Award, among many others. Filled with exciting encounters and sometimes amusing anecdotes, Daryl's impassioned lectures leave an audience feeling empowered to confront their own prejudices and overcome their fears. Thank you for being here, Daryl.
Thank you, Eric.
Next, I will introduce Noah Ornstein. Noah is a feature film producer and general counsel for Sound and Vision. You guys are you do it all. It's amazing. He is a producer of the forthcoming and highly anticipated political documentary on the antecedents and impacts of the Trump era from Sound and Vision entitled, This Is Not Normal. Very apt title. I haven't seen it yet, but I know it's apt. Noah received his JD and MBA from UCLA and majored in political science and history at Tufts. Last, I will introduce Matt Ornstein, who founded Sound and Vision Productions in 2006. Since then, Sound and Vision has produced and developed music videos, commercials, and short and feature-length films. Of course, Sound and Vision produced the Matt Ornstein directed and lauded Accidental Courtesy. But most recently, Matt has directed and produced the highly anticipated feature political documentary, This Is Not Normal. He is a frequent guest lecturer and has directed music videos for artists including Radiohead, Daft Punk, Penguin Prison, Cobra Starship, Ashtar Command, and Harmar Superstar. I only know Radiohead and Daft Punk there. I've never felt less cool. Matt studied film at Bard College. I will also let Matt summarize the film, and then we'll get started. So take it away, Matt.
Thank you so much. I appreciate the interest in it. And look, when I first read about Daryl, it was in a newspaper, and I thought, maybe there's a movie here. I should go meet this gentleman and see if there's a movie. And I went to DC, and he picked me up at Union Station. And in the car, he started telling me things and started talking. And I think by the time we got where we were going, I realized that there was a movie. And I always hoped it would be the kind of thing that we could have discussions like this about. So I'm really thrilled that we're all here today. And thank you, Daryl, for taking a chance with us. I appreciate it.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you.
Well, okay. So now that we did that, let's just jump right in. I am so happy that I have the opportunity to interview all of you, because boy, do I have questions. I enjoyed the documentary, and I can't wait to hear your answers. First, Daryl, the last sentence of your bio here says, let's see here. Filled with exciting encounters and sometimes amusing anecdotes, Daryl's impassioned lectures leave an audience feeling empowered to confront their own prejudices and overcome their fears. A lot of people assume that people do not talk to others beyond their own experience on the other side of the racial or ideological line out of hatred, right? Out of anger. But I'll be willing to bet it's out of fear as well. You don't seem to have that problem. You don't have that fear that most normal people have when it comes to speaking to people with such different ideological views, especially when it comes to race. Where did you get that courage and how can we get it?
Eric, I would not really attribute that to courage as much as I would attribute it to curiosity. And you have to understand my background as a child. I had parents in the US Foreign Service. So I spent a lot of time in many different countries around the world, starting at the age of 3 and through my formative years, into early teens. And so I was exposed to a multitude of various skin colors, cultures, ethnicities, religions, ideologies, beliefs, etc. And so all of that helped shape who I was, or who I was to become, I should say. Those were all stepping stones to what I'm doing today. My father's job was to foster better diplomatic relations between foreign governments and the United States. So I was constantly exposed to all this kind of diplomacy. And I just learned to treat other people, such as white supremacists, as just another culture. And that's how I proceeded. One thing that I've learned, when you combine my childhood travels with my adulthood travels as a musician or what have you, today I've been to 57 different countries on 6 continents. And no matter how far I go from this country, whether it's Canada or Mexico or halfway around the globe, no matter how different people may be from me, whether they don't look like me, don't speak my language, don't worship as I do, whatnot, I always conclude one thing: we all are human beings. And as such, we all want the same basic 5 core values. We all want to be loved, we want to be respected, we want to be heard, we want to be treated fairly, and we want the same thing for our family as anybody else wants for their family. And if we learn to employ those values in any culture or society in which we may find ourselves unfamiliar, I will guarantee the navigation will be a lot more smooth and a lot more positive.
Well, you sound like a very cosmopolitan fellow, and I admire that. And I also admire the fact that you see the commonalities among humans throughout the world. You said 57 countries you've been to?
That is correct.
That is amazing. And you also recognize the several values that we all share as humans. That is ideal. I should stop here and say that I shouldn't be selfish about the Q&A. People listening, if you want to ask questions, you can put them in the Q&A. And towards the halfway point of this conversation, I will start to pick and ask your questions for you. So keep that in mind.
People watching, we've really missed your question. We've all asked ourselves our own questions for so long. We'd like to hear yours, please.
Thank you, Matt. Okay, so what I've also noticed, along with fear, is the hesitance to give other people a platform, right? I know a lot of people who are dedicated to anti-racism who refuse to talk to people like the people you talk to in this film, Daryl, because they don't want to give them the platform. They feel like talking to them is dignifying them too much. So they have to refrain from that. You don't seem to do that. In fact, you want to give everybody a platform. Can you explain in a way that could possibly convince the anti-racist activists I just mentioned that it's good to talk to people?
Okay, well, myself, I don't really define myself as an anti-racist as much as I define myself as a pro-human person. I don't want to be anti somebody. I'm anti-racism, but not anti the person, the anti-racist. Right. I'd rather be pro-human. And a missed opportunity for dialogue is a missed opportunity for conflict resolution. Nothing gets resolved without talking about it first. We are the first country to always try to intervene whenever there is some civil war abreast in a foreign country or a war between 2 countries. We automatically jump in and try to bring both factions together to a summit and have peace talks, et cetera, even though they're on opposite ends of the spectrum. We try to broker that to avoid that kind of conflict. Why don't we do it in our own country? We need it right here as well. Yeah. So I'm the one who's doing that and willing to do that.
Excellent. As a professor of rhetoric, I think that dialogue is imperative to most things, let alone something like this. And that seems to be missing from activism these days, pro-human activism even.
Right.
So thank you for being who you are. Matt and Noah, the showrunners, for lack of a better term right now, tell me, is this something you wanted to do and you found Daryl? Or did you find Daryl and realize you wanted to do this?
I mean, I'll speak first. A little bit of both, I suppose. I mean, I'm always looking for. You're always looking for fire, and when you find something like this, I don't know. I immediately knew this was an interesting story. It was different. It was a different take on it. It's a subject that has been discussed in every direction possible, and this was somehow a new take on the matter. And it seemed like the world was ready for Daryl Davis.
All right.
And to sort of add a footnote to that, that's responsive to your last question, Erec, with regards to providing a platform for these types of views and conversations. You know, Matt and I were the leads throughout the project. Matt was the director, we co-produced it. And it was a process of us kind of discussing these ideas with one another. There, for better or worse, weren't other folks, an editorial board, other producers involved to tell us that a platform can't be provided for these sorts of inflammatory perspectives. And once we really dug in and confronted these people that have such, odious views, I think time and time again, we were less fearful having engaged with them than we would have been had we not engaged and just kind of viewed from afar. We got in there and we mixed it up with somebody like Daryl as our kind of guide, and we were there doing the thing. There wasn't something else, we were just there doing it.
The fear of the thing is often worse than the thing, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
You going to say something, Matt?
No, I was gonna say. I mean, I'm just just jumping in on it. I mean, the guy in the film, Jeff Scoop, who Daryl had never met before, he's had a massive life change.
Yeah.
Yes, he has.
I mean, that's the thing, is like we were kind of trying to, show different parts of the process people Daryl didn't know as well. And he's someone who if you see him in the film and then you see him now, there's money for a sequel here. But there's been a big change. Daryl, can you speak to that?
Sure, absolutely. Jeff, I'll tell you how that worked. I was in a hotel room in Montgomery, Alabama, and Noah and Matt had invited Jeff Scoop. And to just give you a little context, Jeff was the commander of the NSM, which is the largest neo-Nazi organization in this country, National Socialist Movement. He was in the movement for 27 years, and 25 of those 27 years he spent as the leader. I knew who he was. I'd never met him before. And Matt and Noah invited him down to Alabama from Detroit, Michigan, where he resides, and to meet and have a discussion with me. And the idea was for me to remain at the hotel. They were going to the place where it was going to be filmed, set up the cameras and the lights, and then they were going to telephone me and tell me it's time to come over. And I was going to drive over in a rental car they had provided and meet Jeff at this booth and sit down and speak with him. Well, they called me and I headed over. And when I pulled into my parking space, there was this guy sitting on a bench outside with this girl. And I recognized it as being Jeff. I knew what he looked like. I never met him, but I knew what he looked like. And so he was sitting there. I said, oh, wow, I thought he was supposed to be inside and I'm going to meet him for the first time. They're going to film, this meeting. And so I got out of the van and I walked over and I said, are you Jeff? And he said, yeah. And we shook hands and we chatted for a minute or two. And then we walked in together, and Noah and Matt were like a little shocked because that wasn't exactly how it was supposed to work. Yeah. But, we sat down in the booth and we had a discussion. I didn't feel any animosity towards Jeff. When I met him outside, we chatted, very friendly like. And in the booth, we chatted, we had some laughs, and everything was going along smooth. And I think at one point, Jeff forgot who he's supposed to be. And then he had to put in some of his racist, rhetoric, I will fight to the last bullet for my people, and all this other kind of stuff. And I'm thinking, man, this is bull. So after the filming and stuff, while they were wrapping up, I stood around, talked with Jeff for a little while. We exchanged phone numbers and things like that. And then I don't know, it must have been maybe a year and a half, 2 years later, he kind of vanished off the scene. And then he resurfaced and he was talking about me and a Muslim filmmaker, Dia Khan, who did some movies on racism and stuff, and that we had had an impact upon him, and he began to rethink this ideology, and he moved further and further away from it. In fact, he even turned over his membership to a black guy, a black criminal actually, who had just gotten out of prison, and the guy was a con artist and just really screwed him. But anyway, he got out of the movement, and now he runs an organization which I help him with that seeks to de-radicalize people still in the movement, whether they're neo-Nazis, KKK, alt-right, etc., and also gives a lot of lectures about preventing youth from joining these movements. In fact, I've had him out with me on some of my lectures, sharing the stage.
All right.
That's amazing. I mean, just to see that from that night to where it's gone, it's really. I love all the film, but I like that one because Daryl, because I got to watch you work there. You didn't know him. You were going in cold. You had to kind of have some conversation. You had to make your bones with him, and I really enjoyed that personally myself.
And the good thing about this movie, Matt and Noah, they covered like a 360, all aspects, showing that nobody really has a monopoly on racism. They showed people who agree with what I do, people who disagree with what I do, people who vehemently disagree with what I do, et cetera. So it covered the whole spectrum. And racism and things like that are multifaceted, and we all have to come together to address each facet and do it as a cooperative effort. So I think this film really nailed a lot of things that a lot of other films don't nail.
Well, there are a lot of success stories here, a lot of happy stories. Roger Kelly's one, Gary Nye, right?
Yeah.
These are characters, real people in this documentary who you spoke to effectively. You should really write a book about communication, really. It's needed. But let me ask you this: you didn't have all successes, as you kind of alluded to just now. Mm-hmm. There is Tom Robb who comes to mind.
My buddy Tom.
Just through the emotions of that conversation.
I have known Tom Robb for about 30 years. And I first met him out in front of the National Holocaust Museum on opening day. He was there with all people from Aryan nations, the KKK, neo-Nazis, all protesting the Holocaust Museum. He was right across the street. And I recognized him. So I went over there and started talking to him. And he was in a bullpen guarded by the police with all these other, all protesters had their own little bullpen. You had black supremacists over in this bullpen, white supremacists in this one, and some other ones over in that one, and they all had police protection. So I'm talking to Tom across this fence, and he invited me to come in. And so I went to go in, and the police did not want to let me in. They're like, "Oh, you can't go in there, man." And Tom's like, "Yeah, you can. Let him in. It's okay." So they let me in. And I'm standing there talking to him, and people were coming up to me, slapping me on the back. "Hey, man, good to see you," all that kind of stuff. Here's what the deal was. They thought I'd come over from the black supremacist bullpen, because you have to understand, black supremacists and white supremacists, they get along. They get along fine because they have the same ideology. They each believe in separation and purity of the races, so they have that mutual respect for one another. So you're patting me on the back, "Hey man, how you all doing?" And then in fact, the Grand Dragon of New York, a guy named Bill Hoff, who I did know, he was a Klan leader in New York. He came up to me and he asked me, he thought I'd come over from over there. He says, is Dr. Brock over there? Dr. Brock is a Black separatist, and he was over there in that bullpen. I saw him over there. He says, man, I sure admire that guy. I sure like to meet him. Can you introduce me? I said, sure. So I took him out of the white supremacist bullpen over to the Black supremacist bullpen and introduced him to Dr. Brock. We all had our picture made together. So that was my first introduction to Tom Robb. And then I had to give a speech in Harrison, Arkansas, and for Martin Luther King Day. And so I called up Tom Robb. This is like almost 25 years later or something, 28 years later, and said, hey man, listen, I'm gonna be in Harrison. He already knew all about it. Are you here for Martin Luther King Day? You're speaking at the convention center, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, wow, this guy's connected. And I said, yeah. I said, listen, I'd like to have lunch with you. And he said, let me check my schedule. Give me a call back a couple hours, whatever. Either he called me back or I called him back. And he said, we're on. So we met for lunch and talked and had a good conversation. He let me know that he was not my friend, that we were business acquaintances and all that kind of stuff. And then I came back, I guess it was 2 years later, with Matt and Noah. And I said, let's interview Tom Robb. Tom Robb is one of the oldest. He has the oldest Klan group in the country, not the largest, but the oldest, the longest lasting one in modern times. And I said, let me see if I can arrange an interview with him. He's a diehard. And so, we did that. And he sat down with his daughter, who is the highest ranking Klanswoman in Klandom, if you will. White supremacists tend to be very male chauvinistic. They don't give women top positions. But Rachel Pendergraft, which is her married name, is his daughter, and she is one of the highest ranking Klanswomen, and he's grooming her, I guess, for the when he makes that transition. Tom will probably never change. I don't know that Tom really believes all the stuff that he preaches, but I can tell you this: Tom profits off of that. Money talks. He makes money selling his sermons on CD and his rallies on DVD and things like that. So, when the money's coming in, he's going to keep on preaching it. Rachel, on the other hand, I think there's hope for her.
Okay. Well, there's a whole conversation we can have about the effects of capitalism on all of this, but that may take us into midnight. So
you look at Rush Limbaugh and Alex Jones. Do they believe what they're saying? They believe it, for the money.
Well, let me ask you this, and then I have a question for the entire panel, and then we can get to the Q&A. As contentious of a conversation as that was with Tom Robb, arguably the most contentious conversation in the documentary was between you and BLM activists, right? Specifically Kwame Rose and Tariq Toure and an older gentleman named J.C. Falk. I would love to know how you feel about how that went and if anything good could come out of that conversation.
Well, let me give you a summary. First of all, Black Lives Matter is not really an organization as much as it is a movement. They are decentralized, and the name is untrademarked, so anybody can start their own organization. There have been 6 factions of Black Lives Matter: Mississippi, Ohio, one in New York, one in Detroit. I've forgotten where the other 2 are, who have contacted me by email, by LinkedIn, and other things, saying, hey, do you give workshops? Can you teach us to do what you do? So those who approve of what I'm doing, and then there are those who just rip me a new one and call me every name but my own. So they're all over the map, and because they're not centralized. But the particular chapter in Baltimore, and what you saw in the film, which I'm glad was in there because, like I said, Noah and Matt, painted a 360 picture. You only saw about 8 minutes of it. And this went on for almost an hour, and it almost erupted into physical violence. But of course, we couldn't show the whole hour in the movie. Right. But there was enough there to get the point across that, what I was doing in their minds was not right. And let me explain that to you. if I were to, let's say, open up a magazine and I see a picture of a Black man shaking hands with somebody in a robe and a hood, I'm gonna, have a visceral reaction like, what the heck is going on here? But me, I'm gonna turn the page and read the backstory to find out why is this picture taken like this?
Right.
And as I read the story, hey, that makes sense. I get it. That's pretty cool. Some people just jump to a conclusion, don't read the backstory, and they form their own narrative, and that's the end of it. And I can tell you that some, just like the Klan, for example, if you were out on a date with a white girl, or you were married to one, and some Klan people saw you, they would hate that white girl more than they'd hate you.
Right.
Okay, because she has defiled herself. She has sold out her race. You're bad enough, but she's worse, right? Because she's one of them, and she has done a 180. Okay, so that's how they were feeling about me. These particular people, that I had a fetish with the Klan. I should be sitting with them and trying to uplift Black people instead of sitting with these white supremacists. It's not my job to teach white supremacists how to treat Black people, and all that kind of thing, which I disagree with. When people have mistreated you for 400 years and they're still mistreating you, maybe you better teach them something, so, and then I saw, hypocrisy in there, because they march back and forth in front of the police department with a bullhorn, trying to tell the police, no justice, no peace. Stop shooting Black people for holding their cell phones and breaking their back in the back of a paddy wagon, et cetera, et cetera. They're calling police officers white supremacists. All right. The chant was the cops and the Klan walk hand in hand. That's one of the chants. All right. So they're out there in front of the police station teaching what they consider white supremacists how to treat us and not shoot us. What's the difference between them teaching white supremacists with a badge and a uniform and a gun, or me teaching white supremacists with a robe and a hood? It's the same thing. So there's a little bit of hypocrisy there. But anyway, I understood, why they were upset. Now, to Kwame Rose's credit, about a year later, he reached out, and he'd been seeing me on TV or reading something or whatever, and he was beginning to get where I was coming from, and he wanted us to get together and have dinner. I said, cool. I said, no problem. And so I went up there. Tariq Touré could not make it. He was studying to be an imam or something. And so Kwame and the older guy, JC, he and I got together and we had dinner in Baltimore, and that was filmed. And we talked about our differences, talked about how we can work together to combat this racist thing, because it's multifaceted. They do what they do best, I do what I do best, but let's coordinate and communicate with each other so that we can address it as a team. And so that was agreed. And we started doing that. JC and I got together. He came down here to my house. We sat around and talked. We went out and had dinner several times. And then he invited me to a meeting that he was giving. And somehow something just flipped on him. And he reverted back to that angry person, and I was a KKK supporter and this, that, and the other, and I ended up just getting up and walking out, and so did a lot of his audience. They got up and walked out.
Okay.
So that's where that stands now. It's like an alcoholic. They get on the wagon and they fall off. Some of them do. Some of them stay on the wagon.
It's tough for people to change, especially even if they're trying. And it seems like those two are trying, but it may take some time.
Sure, and I understand that.
Yeah, one more question from me, and then I'll turn it over to the audience. And this is for everybody.
Before you jump over to that, I would just say that there was a really great Q&A with Daryl and Kwame, and I wish it was, I don't know if it's on the DVD, but yeah, I feel like they got to know each other better after that conversation, and ultimately, obviously, have much more in common than they don't.
Exactly, and to your point, Matt, like I said earlier, a missed opportunity for dialogue is a missed opportunity for conflict resolution. Matt and Noah invited Kwame and I to the grand opening of the film in New York, And so, we had the opportunity to hang out a little bit and talk. And, a lot of things were resolved. We got to know each other a little bit better. That's what conversation will do. And you saw how tense that scene was.
Yeah.
It wasn't like that at all after we got to talk with one another. In fact, the two of us went out and started passing out pamphlets for people to come to our opening together. I mean, it was great.
Great. I wish I had a camera when you were explaining to him about when you were talking about publishing. I really wish I had a camera. I felt like that was like a beautiful extra moment,
And I think Noah, I think you were the one who told me, and I think it was right here in Silver Spring, that one of the theaters, one of the festival theaters or whatever, had refused to show the film because they thought that scene was staged. Was it you who told me that, Noah?
Yeah.
Yeah, that scene was not staged at all. That was real.
AFI?
Yeah, AFI, exactly.
Well,
interesting.
Staged, but they didn't like that scene for sure.
Well, remind me when the film was put out.
The film premiered in March of 2016. So it's
all right.
It's all in the timing. We're at the precipice of something that's about to become a really big conversation, and we don't know it yet.
Well, here's the thing about that. There's a lot of contention in 2016, but we're in the midst of the Great Awakening right now. Do you think you can make this film today?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think so. Daryl, what do you think?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, but I see, I mean, to your point, like if we made this film today, I think there'd be other people we'd try to talk to as well. I mean, I feel like the core values here of communication are really as under assault as they've ever been.
It would be a very different film, though, in that I think there's, there's been sort of an elevation of a more identity-focused framework for a lot of these discussions.
Yeah.
Whereas Daryl is talking, on a more macro level, but also really willing to engage with individuals independently of identity and talk to people for who they are. And Daryl, kind of shows that over and over and over again. And so it would definitely be a different type of discussion now.
One of the things that I said in the film, I think, a couple things have come to fruition. I'd said, that not everybody who voted for Donald Trump is a racist, but every racist voted for Donald Trump. And I said that I thought he was the best thing that had happened to this country, not through anything he was going to do politically, but the fact that he's talking all this stuff is bringing all this stuff to the forefront. And now we're confronted with it and we have to address it. And that's exactly what we're faced with in this country right now, because we have spent so much time sweeping it under the carpet, turning a blind eye to it. Now it's in our face and we're having to address it.
Okay.
That was a very accurate read, for sure, Daryl.
What's that,
I'm
Matt?
sorry?
I said that was a very accurate read, that it was going to bring to the forefront stuff that people maybe didn't want to talk about.
Mm-hmm.
That was the only upside, I suppose.
Even if inadvertently, it was a good thing.
Yeah.
Right. Well, now the audience has been patient, so I'm going to let you answer some of their questions that I have right here. The first question: how do you connect with people who have so much anger about these issues? I am thinking about the young men you met. Oh, we already talked about this, didn't we? In the Baltimore bar, although I am sure you got some anger from the KKK guys as well. I think we already talked about that to a large degree. If you want to add to that.
Well, you have to know who you are, number one. I know who I am. I mean, there's no doubt in my mind who I am. And when you go into a situation that's going to be contentious, whether the topic is race or abortion or nuclear weapons or the war in Afghanistan or the current overturning of the election or whatever, you have to know your adversary's position and know who you are. Because if you go into a situation like that and you don't know who you are, they will tell you who you are, and you might walk out of there believing them. So, I mean, for somebody to tell me what I am and who I am, and you only met me 10 minutes ago, that doesn't faze me. I'm sorry, it doesn't faze me. If my parents told me who I am, that might faze me because they brought me into this world and they raised me, but not somebody who doesn't know me and just saw me, 10 minutes ago, and they've made this assessment of me because I sat down and talked with some Klansman or something.
Daryl, I'm currently writing a book, and you just gave the thesis statement of that book already. I need to interview you.
Daryl's good.
Anytime. Anytime.
All right, good. That's good news. Another question. And this is a good one I've been wondering about. Daryl, when you interviewed an attorney who pursues a more traditional approach to combating racism, he said he engages in wholesale and you are in retail. Do you have a larger plan for wholesaling your messaging?
Do I have a larger plan for wholesaling or retailing? Because I'm the retail guy. You know, I do what I do. You know, the guy you're talking about is no longer with that organization, the Southern Poverty Law Center. Talking about a guy named Mark Potok. He's gone from there, as is the founder, Morris Dees. You know, I can appreciate what Mark Potok does. He doesn't like me, and that's fine. I appreciate what he does. He flat out said, I'm not here to sit down and have coffee with the Klan. I want to destroy the Klan. Okay. Right. I don't want to destroy anybody. I want to destroy the mentality. That's what I want to destroy. That's why I try to educate people. Now, he attacks them, you know, legally, and he bankrupts them. What he does is he uses what's called the RICO Act, which was created to go against the mafia. Right. You know, so he uses that, and that takes down the whole organization of these different Klan groups. And that's fine. You know, that thing is needed, but that does not change their mentality. They just regroup under another name and continue with their racism. With me, I try to sit down and talk with them and show them a better perspective, a better perception. And hopefully when they change, if they change, you know, they are devoid of that mentality. That's what I want to see. It's like this, you know, the day the buses ended segregation in Montgomery, Alabama, that did not, as a result of the boycott, that did not change the attitudes of the white riders. You know, just because the law said, okay, blacks can sit in the front of the bus, the white riders, you know, did not agree with that, but they knew if they did not abide by it, they would go to jail instead of Rosa Parks. It took a while for them to get accustomed to this and get to know black people, and now they're fine sitting next to a black person on the bus. I provide them that opportunity right off the bat without having to do a boycott or hit them in their pocketbook and take all their money and all that kind of thing.
Okay. Matt and Noah, do you have anything to add or?
Which part?
Any part.
The part about the wholesale and retail.
I mean, I would love to see like a Costco version of Daryl franchise nationwide, get the message out, get people talking to each other. I mean, I think that there's a lot of potential there, but I think these are sort of different things. I mean, Daryl is talking about the root cause of this ailment, which I would love to know, and obviously on a granular level, what the Southern Poverty Law Center and people like that do is extremely important. But I understand philosophically where Daryl's coming from. Noah?
Yeah, I think that, you know, it's one of those great instances in which both people are probably right and can, you know, dislike each other and dislike each other's approaches. I think that the approach that Daryl has is probably a more fundamentally optimistic approach and is framed by the thing Daryl understands best, which is his method, which has worked for him over and over and over again. And it's kind of like a Daryl-centric worldview, which he obviously can't be faulted for, because that's how we all understand these interactions. Yeah. And Mark doesn't have the expectation that there will be people like Daryl that are willing to put in the time, effort, and energy to make these changes happen. And Daryl really does, you know, put in the work. It is a Daryl-centric process. Talks with these folks, he meets their family, you know, it's not...
it goes deeper than people think, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, it absolutely does. He's not like live action role playing Daryl Davis. Like, he's just doing what he's doing. And I can say actually the same for Mark. Like, he really cares about his cause. He does what he does. He's, you know, he's not, they're not like moralizing from the back row. They're, you know, involved in what they're trying to do. So,
you know, and let me add, you know, I mean, both approaches are needed, I believe. You know, you take, for example, prison. prison is not, it's a penal institution. It's not a reform institution.
Right.
And that's why there is so much recidivism in this country. People go there, they don't get any kind of reform, and they get let back out into society when their time is up. And next thing you know, they're back in prison again for doing the same thing. Maybe they're out a little bit longer because they learned how to do it better while they were in prison from other criminals or whatever. So I provide the reform. Mark Potok provides the penalization. And both are needed. If you've done something wrong, yes, you need to be accountable and you need to be punished, and he provides that. But I provide, hey, you're wrong. Let's try to, give you a fresh start and do something different.
I like that metaphor. I'm going to steal it, if you don't mind.
It.
Here's a question that is kind of related to the last one. Daryl, as the trend for anti-racism explodes, emphasizing racial division, are you finding a stronger backlash to your principles compared to 5, 10, and 15 years ago? Have you ever felt threatened by people on the left who vehemently oppose your methods?
Oh, sure, absolutely. In fact, I've been called a white supremacist.
So
by people from Antifa, hey, brother. So, there's a lot of opposition. But again, I don't let it bother me. I've already defined who I am. I know who I am.
Right. Very good. Very good. Another question.
Good question.
As a foreign-born person, it seems almost unbelievable in 2021 that people still join hate groups such as the KKK. How much of a role do you think religion plays in the grooming process or rhetoric that might appeal to individuals with similar beliefs?
You asked me that question, or
anybody who wants to answer? Why not?
Okay, I can answer it, but I'd like to hear from Noah and Matt as well. Yes, let me tell you something. In this country, we get the bulk of our education from 3 different places: our home, our parents, our school, where we spend 8 hours a day, and our church. Our religious institution, whether it's a synagogue, a church, a temple, a mosque, whatever. Yes, religion does play a big role, and I fault religion a lot for perpetuating racism. Now, don't get me wrong, I was raised in the church. I was even a deacon in my church, all right? But a lot of religions in this country have some form of Sunday school. And in Sunday school, we learn that we are all God's children. God made a rainbow. God loves everybody, right? And as little 4- and 5-year-olds and whatever else, we believe that because that's what our Sunday school teacher taught us. And then when we reach puberty or adolescence or whatever, we get kicked out of Sunday school. We get kicked upstairs to the larger congregation. Now we're sitting with the adults and our parents. And the clergy, whether it's a rabbi, a minister, a reverend, a pastor, a priest, whatever you want to call the clergy, they stop teaching the Sunday school lesson. They are no longer saying, we all are God's children. God loves us all right? Because they tend to put money above morality. And so when you say something that your congregation does not want to hear, they're not going to pull out money and put it in the collection plate. You only pay for what you want to hear. And so, if you go out there and you say, hey, all you Catholic people, it's okay if you want to go out and marry Jewish people or marry somebody else or whatever else. That's fine. Or all you white people, if you want to go marry Black people, you can do that. That's fine. Half your congregation is going to get up and walk out, or they're going to get you fired. This is why we have Black Baptist churches and white Baptist churches. It's the same Bible, but why do we have those 2 different churches? Because at one time, Black people could not go to the white Baptist church. Now, today, it's a little easier. You can go there, but in some of them, there's still a fine line. It's like, I can, let's say I'm a Black Baptist. I can go to a white Baptist church, and say, hey, I'm from the Black Baptist church down the street here. I just want to come, worship with you all today. Is that cool? Oh, yeah, come on in. Do you accept me as your brother in Christ? Yeah, of course I do. Give me a big hug. Then I say, Well, would you accept me as your brother-in-law? Oh, it might be a different
So I
story.
did lead them there slowly, but yeah.
Yeah, so because they still have that fine line because you're putting money above morality. And see, in Sunday school, they don't, they can go ahead and teach you the right thing because little 4 and 5-year-olds, they don't have any money to put in the collection plate. So they're not worried about it. It's those people upstairs that have the money. And the church thrives on donations, on tithes and offerings, which is why the collection plate's passed around. So they have to, and the better sermon that the person preaches, the more money you're willing to put in that collection plate. Man, I really like what that guy said today. Here's $20 instead of my regular $1 on Sunday.
Okay.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, look, I have a slightly different. I mean, I agree with that completely, and also, obviously, there's a lot of religions that have been complicit in this over the years. But I sort of, when I hear this question, I guess I'm thinking of the last film we just did. But I think Americans, I can't speak for the world, but Americans have this real need for meaning. Like as they've stepped away from groups they belong to, religious organizations, fraternal organizations, unions, whatever it is, I think people find themselves lacking identity and looking for one. And they sometimes adopt things that are a very poor idea, like Donald Trump or like the KKK. I mean, and I'm not saying these are the only things they can adopt, but I feel like these are places where they find belonging. And the fact that people can't find that elsewhere is something that I think about a lot. It drives a lot of our problems, I think.
Yeah. A lot of this is about feeling like you belong somewhere.
Yeah.
I know where you're going. Noah?
Yeah, before Matt mentioned that, I was going to make, as often our yin and yang, the more like maybe analytical corollary to that point, which is that religiosity in the United States has been declining a ton over the last 20, 30 years. Statistically, we're at the lowest ebb, and no religious affiliation is now I think the largest group, and the only group of religious affiliation that is increasing is evangelical Protestantism, and potentially Mormon Church also is growing. And Matt's point is totally dead on because, the sort of bowling alone phenomenon where people don't have associations with groups that provide them meaning. And then the people who do have the associations are part of these groups that may not have the values that are shared more broadly. So yeah, Eric, it's right on to what you were saying. Exactly. And Matt as well.
And then people come up with their own religions. Tom Robb did not invent it, it was before him, but he subscribes to it. He is what's called a Christian identity minister. And Christian identity is one of the most racist religions in the country. And what they've done is basically just taken, how the Jews are God's chosen people, and there were 12 tribes. Well, they have replaced the Jews with Christians. Christians are God's chosen people, and there are all these different, identities of Christians. So it's Christian identity. Look it up sometime. It is a vehemently racist and anti-Semitic religion, which is what Tom Robb preaches.
All right. If I want to make myself miserable one day, I will definitely look that up.
We have links for you, Eric. Don't hesitate.
And applications.
Oh, God. Let's just change the subject. There is another question here, and a very good one. As a public school teacher, how do I connect with colleagues who embrace the modern version of anti-racism, which seems obsessed with identity politics, dividing groups into oppressed, and which seems highly divisive and cult-like in its demand for compliance? Another question talks about how a lot of current anti-racists are just, everything's about power and not things like that.
The answer to that question is what you should do is contact FAIR, that's putting on this program right now, the Foundation Against Intolerance and Racism. They have a whole brand new set of learning standards that have just been published. And they talk about CRT, critical race theory, and things like that. They have different definitions. And I think that you would find a lot of answers to those questions as to what you can do and how you can combat it. And there are people who will help you, guide you through it, and who will stand behind you, et cetera. My personal feeling on that is, yes, race, the things that have happened in this country, the racist things need to be taught. we should not erase or hide or omit our history. Those things need to be taught, but how they're taught is very important. We can't be going around making people feel oppressed or victimized, or make you are the oppressor and you are the oppressed, that kind of thing. No, we must teach these things as they happened, but we must teach people how to overcome these things and move forward. Not forget them, but how to overcome them and move forward.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that Daryl's point is really really important, because the actual interactions are so much more important than the hypotheticals. And Erec, you probably have a better perspective on that than we do, but you can spend all day debating hypotheticals that'll really just get you all tied in knots, and really can have a conversation that's not as productive as looking at the real interactions that people have and the real issues that are being confronted, instead of manufacturing discontent or villains that may not actually be present.
Okay. Matt, do you have anything?
Well, this is, look, this is a side note, but this made me think of this, and I definitely want Daryl's take on it. What did you think last year when you saw like Mitt Romney marching with Black Lives Matter?
I thought that was good. I kind of questioned a little bit of his sincerity.
That's my question for you, really, because at the end of the day, yes, there's a lot to question, but I feel like if we don't encourage people who do stuff like that, where are we going? But it's not my place to say. So I love your.
I'm just talking about Mitt Romney in particular.
Yeah, no.
I think he has a lot of good ideas. I don't think he's a racist person. I think he has good intentions. But I remember when he was, running for president, that first time around, and the Mormon religion and church has a history of racism and discriminating against Black people.
Sure.
They believed at one time that Blacks could never ascend to the kingdom, and that Black people, they can join the Mormon church, but they can never attain the priesthood. It wasn't until 1975 or 76 when their Mormon spokesperson, his name at the time was Spencer W. Kimball. Spencer W. Kimball said that he had a revelation from God that now it's okay. Blacks can now attain the priesthood and they can ascend to the kingdom of heaven. He had this revelation, which I think was a crock of bull spit. It's just simply not true. I know what that revelation was. It wasn't a revelation from God. It was a revelation from the IRS, because the IRS threatened to take away his the Mormon church's tax exempt status if they were going to discriminate. And the Mormon mission is to proselytize and convert everybody in the world to Mormonism.
Sure.
And so you need money for that. And if somebody's taking away your 501c3, that's your revelation. So he quickly changed the tune, and now Blacks are okay in the Mormon religion.
An example, he is obviously he supports things in the past that we don't necessarily support.
Yeah, but I remember what's the guy's name on Meet the Press? Tim Russert.
Yeah.
He questioned. He had a one-on-one interview with Mitt Romney, and I remember him asking him, what did you think? Why did your church not allow this and discriminate against Black people? He never answered the question. He said, "My father, George Romney, marched with Dr. King." Okay, that's fine. But why do you belong to a religion that discriminated against Black people? I'm not a racist. My father marched. He kept, dodging the issue, and I always faulted him for that. Just come out and say, hey, you know what? The religion was wrong. We were wrong, and now we're making amends. We've changed. Just admit the problem. Nobody's perfect. We all make mistakes. I would have more respect for you to tell me that you were wrong and you had made a mistake. And you can apologize for it, but at least admit it. And he dodged the question. So then when he gets out there and marches with a BLM or whatever, it doesn't really impress me. But here's what does impress me. Okay, I think that this is the greatest thing in our history of the 20th century and of the 21st century thus far. Let me explain this to you. let's pinpoint the beginning of the civil rights movement as being, let's say, 1955 with Rosa Parks and the bus boycott and Dr. King. The powers that be, which is a polite way of saying the white power structure, when they looked at those protests and those marches, they saw an ocean of Black people with a smattering of white people mixed in. There have always been some white people who've always seen the vision and supported us, but it was predominantly Black people. So they shut their ears, they shut us down, and the pages of progress turned very slowly. Now, that was in yesteryear. Let's fast forward to last year, 2020, all right? When the powers that be looked at the protests and marches in the wake of the George Floyd lynching, what did they see? They saw a sea of Black people and a sea of white people marching together. And as a result of that collective voice, those pages turned a lot faster. In the past, cops, if they were to be charged, it would take months and months and months. And then after they were charged, they rarely got convicted. The charges were dropped. Now today they're being charged, boom, 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 and being convicted and fired all within a couple of weeks. All right, that's progress as a result of that collective voice. And while those protest marches were geared predominantly towards the police, there was an even larger ripple effect that we have never seen before in the history of this country. That ripple effect was NASCAR banning the Confederate flag. NASCAR, which was ground zero for the Confederate flag. The sovereign state of Mississippi removing the Confederate portion out of their flag. Food brands like Aunt Jemima and Uncle Ben's changing their labels. Legislation being passed to change the names of buildings named after slave owners to remove Confederate statues. We've never seen all this stuff happen so fast in this country.
Juneteenth being a real holiday.
June 10th, right, exactly. So what is the difference between those marches of yesteryear and last year? There is more of the collective voice. And that proves that this is what we need. We need to bring these people together, and that's how things are achieved.
Daryl's the best. And I don't know who's watching this exactly, but any opportunity that we get to say to people, when you were out there this past summer, that mattered. It all matters. Everything contributes. Like, don't stop.
That is a wonderfully positive note to end on.
Keep going till you get there.
It is 9:59 right now. We're about at the end of our discussion. Gentlemen, if there's anything else you want to say to conclude things, go ahead and say it right now.
Since I'm to the right of you, I'll just go. I see in the chat box, there are a lot of great questions we didn't get a chance to.
Yeah.
Anyone who said, I appreciate your interest, taking the time. We'll try to respond to some of you later, but please check out the film, check out the bonus features, check out Daryl's work. This organization is really fantastic. We don't just agree to anything. Like this is exactly the kind of place we were hoping our film might get showed when we made it. And Daryl, I just have to ask before I pass it over to you. Have you? I know you had a break last year, but have you done any things where you showed the film and then played afterwards for people? Have you done a full Daryl Davis experience?
I've not, but if you set it up, I will do it.
That's a deal.
All right. Good to see
you
guys again.
Together. Noah, anything?
Yeah, just to sort of echo that sentiment. Thank you to everybody for watching the film, for enjoying it, for taking the time to hear this panel. And, as Matt says, when we're contemplating new projects, you're never surprised by who's not doing what you think they should be doing. And so it's kind of incumbent upon yourself to get out there and, make films, talk to people, have these conversations, and start organizations like FAIR. And Erec, many thanks to you for hosting this and posing these great questions. And I look forward to reading your next book as well. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Daryl, anything?
Thank you all very much. And it's a real pleasure to see Matt and Noah again, and to have you hosting the program, Erec. Really appreciate that. I appreciate all the questions. I wish we had more time to answer some more. And I hope you all will check out the film if you haven't seen it already. And those of you who have, please tell all your friends about it. And also want to remind you, FAIR has, I believe, three more films to be shown. So on the same link that you saw this film, Accidental Courtesy, there are 3 more out there waiting for you to see them. So please, join in and see those films as well, and join them for Q&A. Check out FAIR, the Foundation Against Intolerance and Racism. Become a member, become a supporter. Be out there doing something. You don't have to be on the front line like Matt and Noah and myself, but you can be on the back line, you can be on the sideline, you can be online, but be doing something to move this country forward.
People who missed it here, that we're on Amazon Prime, we're on iTunes, we're on Canopy. Thank you all so much for your time. You could be anywhere, you chose to be here. We appreciate it.
Well, you all said it all. So I will just say good night.
Thank you so much.
Good night, Eric.
Daryl. Thank you, Noah.
Thank you.
Thank
everybody.
you. Thank you, guys.
You guys
Thank you, everyone.